That would have been a shame if we completely missed out on a recording for this one. So we're working on discussing the path of Ayin from last week, or this past period, moving into the path of Samekh. And we have a new class member here, and so I just want to talk to her briefly about the process that we're all kind of going through. There are 22 Pathworking recordings that I made a couple of years ago. And these classes really focus on using them. Now, you don't absolutely have to use the recordings. You can do whatever you want, but we're basically focused on that. So basically, the people who've been involved since the beginning and the people who came in shortly afterwards have basically been listening to one of these recordings a few times for the period of a week or two in between the times when we have these classes, and then we discuss their experiences with those. And so each of the recordings is based on one of the paths of the tree of life, and the paths lead from the physical world all the way up to the highest divine realms. And so the first recording that we listened to brought us up to from the physical world up into the next level, and so forth and so forth. We've been working through these levels over the past couple of months. So now, what I would recommend for a new person coming in who's starting, in the midst of this all, would be to start at the beginning and listen to each of the recordings a couple of times, and listen to the class as well. I think that would be very helpful. And the classes are downloadable for free. The recordings are not free, but the classes themselves are free downloads. I think I'm 2 or 3 behind on the classes, but I'll be getting them up fairly soon. My children have been sick, so I haven't been spending as much time online. So back to what people have been saying about the path of Ayin. Robin says, Ayin was not disorienting as the others have been, the others being Sadi and Pei. Ayin was not hard at all and presented a few wonderful moments of guidance. I found myself able to meet with my inner teacher during the process. Okay. Alex says, part of it was my approach to it. I just let it work without expecting anything from myself. Okay, so I think that's a good general attitude to have in all of these things. Alex says also, I'm pretty strongly Christian in my orientation, so Ayin had a lot to work with. Sure, I mean that's basically coming from a strongly Christian background, because it's the only one where I really used Christian imagery. Although all of the Tiphereth ones have a little bit of Christian imagery in the entry into Tiphereth. Marianne, let me just mention one other thing, because we're sort of babbling a lot of jargon here. I recommend that you take a look at if you're not familiar with it. I don't know where you are and things. If you're not familiar with it, I recommend that you take a look at a tree of life diagram, and maybe print one out and have it in front of you. Now, I was sent one. I've been sent a few as we've been going along here. So, Marianne, if you want to write to me, my email address is jason@newhermetics.com. And just say, please send me a diagram of the tree of life. I'll send you one that has the references that we make in this course, because there are actually a lot of trees of life out there. Robin says that she did the same as Alex had done with Sadi Pei, and found them quite disorienting. Yet with Ayin, things seem to be almost balancing for me. Okay. Brandine and Kevin said loved the outcome with accepting both what I would call bad and good to just as God is all. Okay, Mariana says she's a student of Qabalah, been studying for 4 years. Okay, excellent. Now, so just for clarification's sake, because it's been coming up and we're going to discuss this a little bit more, there's more than one way of attributing the Hebrew letters to the path between the Sephiroth and the Tree of Life. And the specific way that we're using in this course relates to the order of the Golden Dawn from the 19th and 20th centuries and 21st. So this is a particular and idiosyncratic way of approaching the tree of life. It is the one that's most common within the Western magical traditions, and that's what we're using. I don't want to take away other attributions that people may have for the paths and stuff, but in this particular course, that's the lens that we're looking at things through. So back to Ayin. The challenge in Ayin was basically to enter into Tiphereth through the energy of confronting what is our moral code, what we can and cannot allow, can or cannot accept in our lives, and to let go of that in order to just enter into the fusion of Tiphereth, a fusion of connection with the divine directly. And so everyone found it pretty easy, sounds like. Did anyone find it difficult? Brendan said it wasn't easy, but it was good. Okay. I understand that, certainly. So, does anyone have any more comments on Ayin other than the fact that they basically enjoyed the experience of it and felt it was valuable? How were people's experiences of the fusion in Tiphereth? Kevin said it opened up his heart to see things differently than before. Alex says there's multiple levels of experience, I think. Absolutely, Alex. And, we approach it with an open heart and just simply allow whatever experience comes up to come up and not worry about it too much, for sure. So I want people to continue talking about Ayin if they want to, but I'm going to move a little bit into Samekh. So basically, the path of Tao that we Alex says because the fusion was absolutely free of worry. Part of him was worried about not worrying on one level. So the path of Samekh takes us up the middle of the tree of life. The first path that was on the middle of the tree of life was the path of Tao, which took us from Malkut to Yesod. Now we move from Yesod into Tiphereth. So this is a very balanced perspective. This is the middle path of the tree of life. It is the non-extreme path. It is the mystical path to the divine. It is the most simply just opening up and allowing oneself to move into the divine. Now, for some people that's very easy. For some people it's hard. It's easy in that you're not so much dealing with the dichotomies that you were dealing with in the Ayin or in the Pei or in the Tzadi, but at the same time you are opening yourself up to basically dissolution. Simply just allowing yourself to dissolve into the light. Now that is alarming in some ways, and in the next path, the path of Nun, which has to do with life and death. You're doing it in an ultimate way that just allows yourself to completely, accept the transient nature of human life. Now I'm going to look over here for a second. Brandine felt that lately that she's worrying about not worrying, learning to relax and allow the divine to enter. Relax. That has really been the key. Sure. Yeah. And not competing. And so this is really what this path is to a large extent. The path of Samekh is about not trying to control the path, not trying to control the process, trying to remove one's ego and expectations from the unfoldment, and realizing that ultimately what the ego is pressing towards, Alex wanting to understand, Brendine wanting to, to feel this joy inside, all of those things that we're craving, that we're trying to get to through pushing forward on a spiritual path. That very process of pushing and craving ultimately keeps us from making that complete connection. It's only when we kind of surrender to the process that we can fully enter into the divine. And so it's a challenging sequence, because we have to propel ourselves in some way, and yet then we have to surrender to the process that we create. We can't just simply sit and vegetate, because that just sort of puts us into a plant-like state. We need to move forward, but then we need to just allow the process to unfold as it unfolds. Robin says, found myself just watching myself and the things I was doing, saying, excellent. That's a very beautiful place to be, entering into the witness state. Well, Juan mentions a shadow clone, and that very thing is coming up to an extent too. That there's further work to be done with the shadow elements of our consciousness. And so I mean, the path of Tiphereth is a path of surrender. It is, and the Christ story is very much an emblem of this path, or of these three paths: the paths of Nun, the path of Samekh, and the path of Ayin, which all lead into Tiphereth, which is simply allowing oneself to release, to just move into the divine, and not try and resist the process, not try and analyze it, not try and hold on to our old notions in some way and still enter into it, but just completely to allow ourselves to move into it. Rurik says that he felt no fear of death whatsoever. Well, that's excellent, and I think that the path of Nun can actually be kind of easy after all the work that you've done. Robin feels the same way, that she has to be careful about who she says that she doesn't have the fear of death around, because they might take it the wrong way, I guess. One says, it was no fear of death, but the shadow version would mock me in every sense. It would not allow me to move further down a path. It would physically block me and would verbally repeat what I would say to it, even to the point of us fighting, and it just able to take as much as I dished. Interesting. I mean, these are good, powerful, mystical experiences that are certainly learning processes for you all. Well, Brendine, the shadow version of ourself is all those things that we find unacceptable, which are actually in ourselves. Anything that you're resistant to on any level is something that you create and empower through that resistance. I don't like people who practice black magic. There's no reason to concern oneself with that in any way. So by saying that, by investing energy in it, we actually empower those black magicians through that exercise. Juan says, it was a physical version of me, an exact clone, just a dark shadow, no skin tone. And yes, as Jason stated, it's all the things I have given to ego. Alex has a question. Booming. What about concerning with oneself with things that could be actually harmful? Well, I mean, certainly there's there are things that are true on the biological level that one has to, keep in mind. You know, there there are these religious groups that will play with snakes because they read that snakes won't harm you in the Bible, and they frequently die from snake bite. In fact, there's a man who died a year or so ago whose father had died from snake bite, and yet he still continued the tradition and actually died from snake bite himself. So certainly you don't want to be, there's a difference between being foolish and being open. There's what we consider, there's a spiritual level on which we operate, and then there's the physical level. You don't want to drink turpentine, but being afraid of turpentine is not helpful to you either. You just simply don't put energy into places that are going to be harmful to you. But let us return to the spiritual level for a moment. The path of Samekh is Alex puts it quite well. He says, there's a difference between revulsion and caution, between fear and self-honesty. TV says, respect women and turpentine. Sure. So, the path of Samekh, which is this week's project, it's very much about surrender. It's about putting oneself forward and then surrendering to the process. It is the path that is the most related to the concept of surrendering to the divine and that mystical process. In most tarot decks, although not all, the path of Samekh is depicted as an angel. It's called Temperance in the sort of traditional tarot names, and specifically has to do with having a balanced attitude towards things, and actually fits with what Alex was questioning. And I guess my metaphors of drinking poison, one doesn't want to drink poison, but at the same time one doesn't want to fear poison and feel like everyone around them is trying to poison them, or that poison is somehow something that that could be caught through magical contagion. And Juan is saying that he's looking forward to working the path again now that he realizes that it's about surrender. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you confronted the shadow so dramatically on this path, because it's really a path of sort of the metaphors that are used in the recording are really about sort of shedding different layers of clothing and just sort of allowing ourselves to slowly but surely move upward through the divine. And it's really related to the concept of rising on the planes, which is simply just moving one's consciousness upward, 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 upward. TV says, can you see the connection between temperance and its assigned astrological sign? I can't quite get that. Rurik says, are you following the traditional tarot or the Crowley mods? And Robin says, look forward to your experience in reworking one. Please remember to share. Yes, please do remember to share, all of you. So the connection between temperance and Sagittarius, which is the energy that's assigned to it, is pretty oblique. The concept of temperance and the energy of Sagittarius are actually somewhat at odds with each other. In that, Sagittarians tend to be sort of throw themselves into things in a sometimes unbalanced way, whereas temperance really has to do with balance. What we key into in the magical traditions is really and actually you can see the Golden Dawn one shows it a bit more clearly. The two cups in temperance are extremes, any extremes. The moral ones that we've talked about, the idea ones, all the different, yin and yang, the different energies combining together in balance. And as I said, in this middle path, it is balanced. So what is happening in this path is that and this is very Kabbalistic. The rainbow that was created by God after the flood is a bow, and our aspiration is an arrow. And so that is the connection with Sagittarius right there. You can see, maybe if it focuses well enough, in this Golden Dawn version, you actually see the bow, an arrow, and a little rainbow being represented. In the Rider-Waite version, you see an insinuation of an arrow in this triangle here, and the lines going downwards. The intention was to sort of show the idea of the symbol without showing it too much. And the bow is called keshet, which is the word for bow and rainbow in Hebrew. And if you look at the tree, as we have been exploring it, on the pillar of mercy, we see the Kaf, the first letter of keshet. On the pillar of severity, we see the Shin, talking about leading off from Malkut. And then in the middle, we see Tau. So we've got Keshet, the word represented in the tree right there, which is one of those interesting things that the Golden Dawn was very fond of. And it's actually, Keshet is considered to be the initial veil from and then Paroketh is the next veil beyond that. But that bow is formed, there in order for our aspiration to be sort of launched into the divine. So there's a little bit of sort of Kabbalistic stuff. Oh, the Crowley deck also depicts the arrow, although you probably won't be able to see it on the computer. But it's here, right in the middle. You can see that there is something there, and if you get if you look on the internet for it's actually Crowley calls this card art rather than temperance, as a way of kind of getting away from that concept of the sort of anti-drinking part of temperance that I think has sort of taken over the concept of the word to a large extent. I mean, it really means balance and approaching all things in a balanced way, rather than going off too much in any one direction. The alchemical ones, I think, have an interesting image for it, which is, it doesn't depict an angel. Instead, it shows, again, these balanced forces kind of combining together. The higher and the lower. And in most of them, you'll see a depiction of a sun in the background, like this one here. And that represents the entering into Tiphereth that is at the conclusion of this, because the central Sephira is considered to be related to the sun in one way or another. And you don't see it in the path of Ayin that much, but in the path of Noon, if I can find, stepping ahead, you also see that same sunrise there as well. So this week's, or this 2 weeks, this bi-weeks, this fortnights, that's the classy word for a 2-week period. This fortnight's path, Samekh, will be about surrender. And for some of you, I suspect it will be a challenging path, even though I don't think that it is personally. But you guys, we're all coming from different places. Now, speaking of that subject, I want to talk about something, and unfortunately, producer who I was having a conversation about this with, it doesn't seem to have made it. I think she may have stayed up too late last night and may have slept in. I don't know, but oh, she's on the phone. Okay, terrific. Well, hi, producer. Oh, she's having trouble getting on. Okay, well, she can listen to the recording anyway. Robin, I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But what I want to discuss is in moving ahead spiritually. One of the challenges that we face is that there are many, many, many different teachers out there, many different teachings, many different approaches to life. And in today's world, we confront them all. You know, it's very easy to find 1,000 different teachings very easily in a short period of time, simply with an internet search. Now, all of these teachers who aren't just simply, trying to make money or anyone who's worth their salt in teaching is really trying to teach the same thing. Each of us is coming from a different place, though. Everything that we're doing in this class could be done in a different way. We're working with a set of metaphors in a particular way to lead to something that cannot really be fully expressed in words, and cannot even be fully held on to in any permanent way. It's something that one awakens to and then carries with them in perfect form or in distorted form, depending on where they're coming from. And as far as I'm concerned, there isn't a correct path or a teacher that is without fault. All of us are human. Even the most divine are human and have failings and have areas in which their eyes are not completely open. Anyone who claims that they're not that way, I think that you should look at them a little suspiciously. Now, I've been having a conversation over the past couple of days with Brandusa because she has a set of tarot cards that teach a slightly different set of correspondences for. In fact, it's exactly one off from the ones that we're using in this course, and that's because in the 19th century there were some people who published some books in which they started. We started the first path with Aleph being the fool. The path of Tau, the last path, the world. Some other people have placed the first path with Satan, and so the last path becomes the fool. And there are many other ways that people have organized the tree, and so there are many different ways of organizing this material. It all is pointing to the same things. We're going to continue using the metaphors that I'm teaching with, just simply because that's what we're going to do. But I don't want to tell you that you couldn't also get some benefit from studying some of the other ways. Absolutely. The thing is that these are all metaphors, and they're all leading to the same place. If you are traveling to Jerusalem, and you're starting in China, and I'm traveling to Jerusalem, and I'm starting from here in Florida, we're going to have an entirely different journey to get to Jerusalem, even though we're heading to the same place. And that's okay. Even if someone starts from a town over from where I am, they're going to have a slightly different journey. Even if we walk hand in hand, we're going to have a different journey. We're going to see different things. Different things are going to mean different things to us. Looking at this, the background here, some people might look at this sky and say, oh, it's a big, beautiful, beneficent sky. Other people might look at it and see it as a looming, terrifying sky. It's the same sky. The metaphors that are applied to it differently. You can describe the sun as the beneficent source of all life, or as a fiery, withering, hot, drying force that destroys everything. It's both of those things. It does both. So to think of the sun with just one metaphor isn't fully describing the sun. So there's value in more than one. You can describe a rose, another symbol of Tiphereth, which we're moving towards. You can describe a rose as a beautiful symbol of love and the delicate, nature of expanding reality. Or you can see it as a thorn bush that's dangerous, or that can be used as a wall to keep people out, as in the Sleeping Beauty story. So there are many metaphors. Each of the tools that we're doing in this course are a series of metaphors, and they're each going to hit you in different ways, depending on where you are. Like Alex was saying, that he comes from a very Christian background. So for him, when I talked about some Christian imagery in the Path of Iron, it hit him in a way that it wouldn't hit me, because I was raised as a Unitarian Universalist. So although we talked about Jesus and stuff quite frequently, it wasn't, absolutely at the fundamental core of my spirituality. So, certainly the Christ concept has always been an important concept within my own spiritual path and my own development. But the literal belief that the Bible represents, a fundamental reality was something that I didn't grow up with, per se. I think that, in America, I'm not going to speak for other countries so much, but in America, I think to an extent we're all presented with the reality that the Bible is somehow an expression of absolute truth. I think that whether you resist it or not, you're still kind of fed that information and it sinks into your consciousness. So I think we live in a fairly biblical society. So I'm not going to say that I didn't have that in my consciousness. It's not as central as it might be to Alex or someone else who was raised in a very, tightly Christian home. So all of the metaphors operate in different ways. And it's important to just sit with things and allow them to grow inside you and to help your awareness. Our whole purpose here is to free you more and more from the things that bind you into limitation, that bind you into anger, that bind you into frustration, that bind you into feeling disconnected, feeling like you don't have a divine guidance in your life, that you're alone. Those are the things that I want to help you to open up away from, open up into more beautiful and connected and guided and loved and expressing love. Those are the energies that I'm trying to help you to move toward. The metaphors are just there to assist in that process. In neurolinguistic programming, there's something called process instructions. And that means that we describe the kind of the essence of things without trying to control the content too much, so that you can have an experience that's for you, for your consciousness. For instance, if I just simply say, I'd like you to open up to a learning, that's a process instruction. It doesn't describe what the learning might be. It simply says there is a learning to be had here. And if you open yourself, you're going to receive learning. And what that means is that when we operate that way, to an extent, each of us are at different places. And so the learning that we receive is going to be slightly different. Now, I know that when you open yourself to a learning, you learn something. When you open yourself to removing barriers between yourself and others, you remove some barriers. They may not be quite the same barriers, and ultimately we may confront different barriers as we're going along, and different levels of connection. So I'm not going to try and control what those things are, but ultimately my purpose is for you to be more happy, more blissful, more, even those words are limiting, to be more free from conditioned reality. One says, in building a house, one may use a great many tools, new and old. In proper hands and with training and guidance, all tools serve the very same purpose, building the house. Yes, and we may ultimately be building different types of houses, but we still use largely the same sort of methods. People build a foundation, and then they put of some sort. There's different kinds of foundations, but then they put up structural supports, and then they fill those in. Robin says she likes the word freer from conditional reality. Brendan Kevin says, I find my past teaching produces a bias and conditioned understanding. I've had to leave the old behind to get an understanding, then look at the old without the bias. Brendan's saying that. Every house and every condo is a star. So, yeah, there's no one who escapes conditioning. That's just, whether even a person who's raised by Buddhist monks is going to be conditioned by the cultural, rules of that reality. Even if the Buddhist monks are all basically saying, we want you to be free, we want you to be free, there's still going to be imparting rules and restrictions and stuff along the way that cause a person to need to break free from conditioning. A lot of people who are raised by very spiritual people who don't force their religion on their children end up not really being interested in religion whatsoever. It's interesting, and it's because that free attitude often engenders a sort of cynicism. So everyone gets sort of locked into different realities, and our effort is to open up to a complete free experience of the universe. So, let's see something here. Now, what you said I think is interesting, Brendan, and I think it's important that, in freeing yourself from things, it doesn't mean that you aren't going to, again, pick them up and actually continue living with them. There's nothing about a moral code that is wrong. That you shouldn't adhere to the values that you have. There's no reason not to. But when one is feeling locked into those values, and that one has to protect themselves from other people's values, then there's a situation of enslavement, and either you are enslaving them or they are enslaving you, and there's a battle between things that just doesn't need to be there. Berg says you cannot have no system, but you could choose and modify yours at a highest level. Yes, well said. Well said. One says well said. Now, Path of Samekh is again about freeing oneself from stuff. Now, me personally, I find it to be an easier way of approaching it, just simply because you're just sort of allowing yourself to expand more and more, and to move past different territories, and to just blend, with all things. Some of you might find it more difficult. Brendine says she was locked into a fundamentalist Christian, and all was evil, all but what I was taught. Right, absolutely. And to an extent, I think everyone's raised that way, whether overtly or subtly. I know a lot of people who are very sort of left-wingy, very, they like to eat a lot of organic foods, and they like co-ops, and they, want everyone to, but there's all kinds of crazy, highly restrictive, highly fundamentalist viewpoints that are within that as well. And when you look at it from outside, you say, "Oh wow, this has just as many limitations as any other kind of way of looking at reality." Even though they themselves would think, "Oh no, we're the good guys. We're about freeing people," and they still end up placing a bunch of rules on people. Juan says, that path, Samekh, in this particular group chat has really blown my mind. I look forward to really reworking that path and giving myself to surrender as a way to free myself. Brendine says, I was going to hell for having a pentagram. Believe me, it was hard to let go of that. And Juan says, thank you. No, I know just what you're talking about, Brendine, because even though, like I said, I was raised in a much more sort of left-wingy, everybody's okay, we're all supposed to support each other. There still were a lot of rules there, and even there, there's a level at which, involving oneself with evil spirits or something like that is a step too far. And so there's layers within there too. But like if you're a person who's a real liberal Democrat, you're not really allowed to also be interested in owning a lot of firearms and going to the firing range and shooting. That's not really allowed, And so ultimately, even though they would say, "Oh no, we just want to make the world a safe, beautiful place, and that's why we don't like firearms," they still want to restrict people from, doing what they want to do. Alex, do you find that funny, the idea that there's only two ways of looking at politics because you're from Canada? Is that what you're saying? Rurik says, no rules equals anarchy, too many rules, dictatorship, just enough rules equals give direction. Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I think that the world has largely gone to this, like, binary concept of political persuasions, even though it doesn't actually make any sense whatsoever, since there are so many disagreements within any one little, binary look at things. Absolutely not. Juan says Jason for president. No, that would be the last thing that anyone would want. Literally, except for maybe one or two of you guys. I don't think anyone else would want. But the pentagram is a wonderful example of something that absolutely has nothing to do with evil or religion at all. It's just simply a geometric shape. But because a metaphor has been applied to it, that means that it's, that someone pretty arbitrarily decided that the pentagram was a symbol of evil and witchcraft, that was something that, a good Christian had to stay away from. Does that mean that a good Christian has to stay away from a 7-pointed star as well, or a square, or a triangle, all of which are used quite frequently in the same sorts of things that a pentagram would be used in? I mean, I wrote a funny article. I don't remember which one of the journals it is, but like where basically this fundamentalist preacher is saying that the children shouldn't study math because math is evil. The old pagan Greek philosophers were they promoted that people study math for spiritual reasons, and that's of course against the teachings of Jesus. So I mean, you can take anything and make it completely absurd. But I mean, the pentagram is really it's a really good victim of the of the religious battles, because I mean it just simply has there's no more frequent occurrence of the pentagram than any other shape amongst old talismans and stuff like that. It just sort of got I'm not sure if it was Hollywood or if it was something slightly before Hollywood that made it sort of get representative of of witchcraft, and then of course, as modern people sort of decided to call themselves witches and adopt witchcraft as an identity, it became a symbol of it, which it's no more a symbol of it than anything else. Certainly, Anton LaVey, with his inverted pentagram, for sure, had an impact on that viewpoint. But it was I think previous to that, because we see it in old movies too, here and there, as a symbol of magic. And that may actually be from the Golden Dawn, because the Golden Dawn had the pentagram plays a significant role in the rituals, the magical rituals of the Golden Dawn, and so that may have influenced early Hollywood in some way, and so forth and so on. Robin says it's sad how things can take on evil, bad connotations due to the media. Sure, I mean the most evil thing that Aleister Crowley did was to have sex with other men, and that was really what got him into trouble initially. He aligned himself with a lot of other craziness as he was going along, but the initial thing that got him negative notoriety was supposed homosexual relationships. So, and of course nowadays that wouldn't seem like anything at all. Now, I mean, when you combine homosexual relationships with a free love organization and rituals that sometimes invoke demonic entities, then of course you are going to, the blend of all those things makes things seem a little weird. But the essence of spirituality is even present amongst those who practice certain forms of Satanism. There are quite a few people who call themselves spiritual or religious Satanists. The Anton LaVey ones are very sort of hedonist and just sort of self-oriented, and whatever. You can look at that as good or bad. It doesn't, irrelevant. But the spiritual Satanists really often view the devil or Lucifer or whatever term they use for it as actually being a liberating God that is a spiritual essence that frees them from the evils of the world that was created by a mean creator God. Now, I mean, this is a weird set of spiritual metaphors, and there were some old Gnostics that felt it in a similar way as well. But there are people who have a profoundly religious feeling towards their image of whatever Lucifer or whatnot, and I don't know any of them personally, so I can't say whether they're getting spiritual benefit from it or not, but I do know that that's the way that they feel. And so if for them God is the devil, it really doesn't matter ultimately to us. Brandine says, Crowley threw me for a loop at first with his reputation, but there is such beauty now, I am understanding more of the depth, although I let you and Juan guide the study there because some of his, because he has some strange thinking. TV says, is this what is meant when someone refers to herself as Luciferian, like Promethean? Some people, yes, that's true. Like I said, there are many different stripes of people who involve themselves in that sort of transgressive religious activity. Some of it is just sort of silly and absurd and juvenile, and some of it is, a spiritual path. It's not my path. I can't really speak about it with any great knowledge. Alex is saying that it's almost half past. Robin says, "Shh." Okay, well, I do want to keep these two around in an hour. So, this week's path has nothing to do with that particular thing. That's actually, or last time's path was more that's accepting that there are different rules. This one is just simply opening up in a balanced way to the divine. Now, Mariana, I'm sure that you've gotten sort of an earful of all kinds of craziness in here, but this is quite a benign and beautiful path right now. So, now, no, I don't want Alex to feel bad that we can continue talking for a few more minutes, and Alex, you can leave when you need to, but I do want to sort of wrap things up and have keep us on track with these classes. We're not going too far afield from our purpose. Oh, Diana's here. I didn't even see you here. So Mariana says, "Thank you for sharing to all. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you here." So going forward with this particular path, it's similar in a lot of ways to Rising on the Plains, which I have another recording for as well that might be useful to listen to in conjunction with this particular one. And that one's part of the Hermetics sort of core programming. It's in the philosopher level. I think it might be the last recording in that level. Yeah, it's very inexpensive. I think it's like $3 or something like that. So rising on to give you a definition of rising on the plains, Kevin and or Brendan, it is simply just taking one's consciousness in an astral body or an imaginal body, simply rising upward and continuously rising, moving upward in a straight line. And when one comes to what is perceived as the end of the farthest that they can go, simply just opening up more and allowing oneself to rise a little bit further. And it's a very sort of mystical kind of a practice, similar to traveling astrally or to doing spirit visions, except that instead of trying to get to a place where you're communicating with something, you just simply continue rising upward. And that ultimately is the same basic energy that we're working with here. We just conclude this particular exercise with a specific entry into the next sephira as well. So I think that's all that I wanted to communicate. Let me just look over here. So I hope everyone has a wonderful 2 weeks. And if you have any more questions or want to have any more commentary, we can continue to do so for a few minutes. I'm going to stop the recording though, okay? So, thank you all.